Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Garage Studio Modelers. I'm Dave Forrest, and this is my good friend
Harvey Lowe.
And in today's episode, it looks like we're back on the Sheridan.
Yeah, first off, I guess we gotta, I gotta apologize because I keep coming back and on to projects, and it's one of these things where this one is taking a little bit longer because I want to go through all the techniques. Hope you can bear through without us, but I'm thinking that we were just talking right now, for the future, we're probably going to take a few more shortcuts and make sure that each project will be, perhaps a few more episodes. Love to hear your comments. But anyways, we're back to this, and I think what I'm aiming at in this episode is the final weathering of this, and we'll do that more or less from this point. The last episode, we covered washes and a bit of the mud on the undersides, and today I'm going to call it mud refining. So that's what I'd like to do today, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Looks like there's been some progress made.
Yeah,
looks good.
yeah, there has.
Nicely.
Yeah. Now you may recall from the last episode, I always apply washes first, and then this case you always start with the bottom. I learned that from you, and then I apply a wash and start working in the powders. And the washes I'm using at this point are enamel washes. Okay.
Are you making your own? Or?
Yes, I am. I tend to use Winsor Newton oils, thinned with Humbrol enamel wash. So be aware that the washes I use tend to be enamel washes, but then when I work in the mud, I tend to switch back to oils. Okay. A little bit more oils, and there's a difference between the effects of enamel washes and pure oil washes. So I'd like to go over a bit that today, and maybe just work a bit on the undersides, and we'll do a bit of the top sides after that. Okay, but basically, in fact, we were just commenting, these single color are really tough to do sometimes because they kind of die. And I did get a comment from Will, and Will made a comment. You're right. When I say modulate, my modulation is much more subtle than yours. And sometimes my mistake, and I admit it, I cover too much of it. And then I usually bring back up that modulation using...
you can still see it. Like, I can see this. There's still modulation.
It's still there, but it's not as pronounced. And what I find is that modulation is not just pre-modulation, it's post-modulation.
But it's right? Artistic license.
It is.
What you prefer, what looks good to your eye. Again, you're building these models... you should be building them for you.
Yeah, well, I mean,
right?
Yeah, but I find that your modulation, you need that contrast.
But that's my preference.
Yeah,
right. It might not be everybody's cup of tea. It might, it is a little bit stylized, and it is a little bit when you bring it up that much.
But I bring mine up, is what I'm saying, after. You do such a good job at pre-modulation.
Yeah, it's hard,
right?
After I find it hard.
I like it after.
I mean, maybe you have a little bit more control after.
You do.
But I just find it.
It is easier.
I find it daunting to do after.
Either that, or you have to have a discipline to go. Okay, don't cover it. Keep that contrast. But I'm going to bring up the modulation a bit with those shaders. Those are really nice paints. I'll do that. And some oils. So far, it's pretty well built. And this thing fits on top like that. And you've got the cupola. And we're basically winding down to final weathering and stowage.
And this gun shield, that's aftermarket?
That's aftermarket.
That's the FC?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It looks great.
Yeah, it makes it unique.
Really, like in scale, 3D printed stuff. Yeah.
It's really nice. It's a bit. We're on to 3D. The only problem with, I find, 3D is they're very brittle.
They can be, yeah.
They can be brittle, and if you look closely at this stowage thing, you see how some of those are filled in. Some of the meshing is filled in because the 3D printing wasn't fine enough to get all of it. See what I mean? It's kind of like looks like.
So that's not paint blocking. No, that's from the.
That's
print.
That's the.
Now,
print.
would you take an old airbrush needle and try and...
You could, but they're very brittle. If you punch through, you might break it. Mm-hmm. But I figured, you know what? There's going to be stowage on it, so no one will notice.
Oh, true enough. Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, but it does add a lot to the model, and the FC really does some neat stuff.
Yeah.
Also, FC are the little double 30 mount, MG mount.
Nice.
Right? And again, this piece here, it really adds to the model. So do look for 3D model, but they are very brittle compared to the traditional methods of resin printing.
Yeah, I love the 3D print stuff.
Yeah.
Like well, like that. So we ordered. So I have a IVG Panzer II.
Yes.
And I ordered the
Yep.
smoke grenades and
Yep.
the fine chain on it.
Yeah.
Like it's so delicate. You're right though, but like trying to cut it off, like it just.
Yeah, I find I have to use almost sometimes depending how thick it is, a rotor, Dremel rotor, and just saw through it. If you're cutting it, it'll break.
Yeah, I'm still a big fan of like just using like a razor
Fine
saw by
razor.
hand and
Yep.
just try and cut it off like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
It's nerve wracking.
It is. I find with God's hand, sometimes you clip it, they'll break.
Or they fly off in
Or they fly off,
Yeah,
yes.
never to be seen again.
Canada. So we're going back on a weathering session. Again, my apologies. It's been a long haul in the Sheridan, but I figured we'd take it step by step. Today, we're just going to finish up on some weathering, and then probably have the stowage, and then basically the tracks are kind of the same as the weathering techniques that we're going to show here, and then it'll be finished. So right now, just to review what we've done before, you may recall that I applied, again, oils and thinners, and then mix some powders in to get a feel for the colors I'm going to use. You do that, right, Dave? Do you experiment first with colors that match the color of the model?
Like for mud.
Like what kind of mud colors do you choose for your model?
I think I have my standard mix of pigments that I use. I have my standard choice of like the acrylic, like the AK acrylic paste that I use.
But how do you choose the colors of mud and pastels? Do you just kind of experiment around?
Yeah, I've got my standard, and then for whatever reason the standard doesn't look right on them all. For whatever reason, like maybe on the stud because it's a winter whitewash, a little bit different.
That's
maybe
what I'm
I do
getting
something different, but I
Yep.
haven't. But I have a standard. I stick with it, like a formula.
Well, there you go. There's the segue. So my stick-to formulas, I usually go with, for mud, like a dark, medium, and light. I don't go with just one, because I find if you go with just one mud color, it's too one-dimensional, and you need that variation. And it's true when you look at muddy vehicles when you're driving on the highway. You ever look at the dirty trucks on the highway, the various colors of mud. So I tend to take, and these are actually the more of the enamel liquids. These are by AK, dark mud. Okay, this one is Summer Kirk's Earth, whatever that word means.
That's a good one, yeah. I like
right?
that.
That's a middle. And then that's the lighter one. And then this one's a medium, dust and dirt deposits. Right, and these are the enamel liquids. These are all by AK, and I tend to use these three colors when it comes to weathering. Similarly, I use
Now, would those be is that a standard?
Yeah,
Like so, same thing.
pretty
Yeah,
much. The only thing that I would change, and this is a good topic. We do a lot of armor on this, but we have an upcoming episode on Yamato. Avoid earth tone colors on naval vessels. It just doesn't look right. So on naval vessels...
There's no earth in the sea.
No, yeah. So then you would use dark to medium to light grays. That's what I meant about choosing your colors.
Yes. I see what you're saying, yes.
Similarly with the powders, I mixed my own dark mud, because you could get a dark mud powder from any brand. AK make, they have a lot of the dark muds. And then this is the medium... which would be a Golden Earth by MIG. This is dry powders. Okay, these are dry powders now. And then Vietnam Earth. How compelling and logical is that? Vietnam Earth for a Vietnam vehicle. And there's a bit more red clay in this color. And so you've got your liquids, and then you've got your powders. And as I mentioned before, this is an old 35 mil canister of film that I mixed, and again review. I've already used this. This is the Raw Umber 554 Winsor Newton, which I use as a wash. Some people may say, why apply a wash when you're going to apply the wear? I just find it's a nice base, and that's what I've got here. There's a wash now that I applied off camera all over the vehicle. And again, what you might say that you've killed some of the modulation. I'll bring that up later. But the wash just sets the base for me, a nice tonal depth and stuff to show you where you can focus your darker colors and your lighter weathering colors. That makes sense, Dave?
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
And then refinement of that are, I love these. These are your oil brushers. And again, 3 tones. I think going 4 is probably too much. I kind of like going 3, right? So now you've got your enamels, your oil brushes for refinement, and your powders, and I'll show you how to use these. My go-to, although they do have a bit of an odor, I love the Humbrol enamel thinners, but you could use the MIG AK have odorless thinners, but I do find that these thinners are a little stronger than the odorless thinners. They are stronger. So I prefer actually these, although you got to open a window when you use them. So coming back to this, a wash is on it, some modulation. Yeah, some of it's killed. I'll bring it back up later. And today I would like to call this refinement of mud. There's a bit of, you saw me apply the mud before, but with applying mud and the oil washes is very subtle. See, you can see these subtle effects. And they're not bad on the bottom. I want to bring them back up. And so another way of doing them, you can apply the powders with a Humbrol wash with Winsor Newton oils, as I've done before. But I want to bring it really, I want to get that contrast. So the first thing to do, shake these. You hear that there's a little BB, a metal ball I have in there. You can hear it shaking around. That helps mix the paints. I'm going to start with dark mud. And this part is going to be a little bit more messy, so to speak. But the first thing you do is get a round tipped brush. Any tip will do. And I want to accentuate. You can leave it like this, but it's a little too clean. And you can keep working the Winsor Newton enamel wash with powders. But if you really want that mudded effect, this is another way to do it. And you just apply the darkest mud along the recesses, and it could be a little messy. And again, it's up to you how far you want to go. Start with a bottom, realizing that it'll get cleaner as it progresses up. Now, what I normally do
So you're just creating a base, basically, with that, right?
Yep. I'm actually now moved on to a different technique of mud than the one I did in the last episode. This one is using these deeper enamel mixes and powders, right? So just apply where you want it to go, and usually it's around the running gear, and then at the top of where the hull meets the upper deck. Now, what I usually do is I let it dry for a few minutes, just like 5 minutes or so. While I'm letting this dry, I can probably begin to just do a very quick review, because I haven't done it yet while that's drying. I'll let it dry live, because I haven't applied a wash yet on this little this armored turret. Now there's still a bit of raw umber Winsor Newton mixed with, again, Humbrol thinner wash that I can apply. Now again, I've done it over that, but since I'm waiting for that to dry, I'd like to do a quick review. This is now going on, you remember when you're applying this wash in the last episode, it's going on a gloss surface, okay? When you apply washes, make sure they go on a gloss surface, so you can just smudge it on, okay? This, by the way, I forgot to mention, the more mud I'm applying technique now is going on a semi-gloss or a flat finish, right? Because once you use powders, you want them to be on more of a flat surface so that the powders can stick. But since this is just a review, since I haven't done the wash on this is going on a pure gloss finish, okay? And just apply it all on. Now again, I tend to let these sit for like 5 minutes, okay? So while that's sitting, we will get back to this part here. Where's my paper towel? We'll get back to this. Now, you could let it sit a little bit more, but this is where you would now begin to take the powders. And again, I'm working with the darkest powders. And again, this is the dark mud. Take a dry brush and you can start working the powders and then put the powders where the enamel weathering product was before. So
would you say those colors are complementary?
yeah,
Like they go together?
they go together.
And
Yeah.
and so is the purpose of applying the pigments over the like the dark enamel product there, the dark mud, is that just to create a bit of texture? Or
Yes.
is that to get it liquid?
Yes, absolutely, Dave. You can use a dry. This is why it's great to have this convo off camera, because as you're applying, it's creating a texture. But this powdered mud is slightly different than the dark enamel mud, and of course it's the fixer. The liquid is providing a fixer because you just can't put the powder on a flat surface. You could actually mix this powder with plaster of Paris. And
To
if
thicken
you,
it up
if
if
you
you want.
really want it thick, like Eastern Front stuff, and you're just dabbing it in. Okay. Now it is hard to see because this mud is on an olive drab color. You will see it on your Stug because it's got that nice Dunkelgelb to provide that contrast, right? So you can see that I'm just applying the powders over the wet. So like I'd let it dry a bit more, but since we're doing it live.
Well, you can't let it dry too much, right? Because
No.
part of it is that you want the powders to integrate with the...
That's right. Now you see how thick the powder's going on, see? It's going on really thick. And I can now begin to see the contrast between this dark mud and the olive drab. You actually want to keep some of these areas clear. So that's why I like doing the Humbrol wash with Winsor Newton first, because it provides a patina. And I actually don't want to cover the larger areas. You'll see it more on the top sides.
Right.
Don't cover it because you want it to show through. Why? I don't like covering mud on everything. That's just my style. Now, just let it sit. Now, again, wait a few minutes.
Now, will all of that fix onto the model? Like, will that stay in place?
It won't. In fact, the idea of having it heavy is just to get a lot of in there. But as you'll see, you're going to be taking stuff off now. And you're going to be mixing. So now that I've used the dark mud as a fixer with the dark powders, let it dry a bit, then we come back with, let's say, the lighter mud, okay, the powder. Why am I shaking a bottle of powder? I have no idea why.
I want to make sure the powder's mixed.
Make sure the powder's mixed. And then you can use a stubby brush to take, now you're not applying any liquids. You're going to apply the lighter powders just kind of like on top of, like where it transitions between the dark
Right.
and the main color of the hull.
But that's dry right now.
This is
correct?
dry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's dry powder now. You're not
You're not working it into anything.
Not
That's,
yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. You're getting it on the model right now. See, it's a lot of wet there. It's a lot of wet liquid there. You're not mixing it in yet. You're just applying it. You're trying to get, this is probably a thicker brush than I want. You're trying to get it so that it's in the transition zone between the dark and the hull color. Okay. Now, again, I'm only using 2. I think if you use 3, it's a little too much. The lightest powder is this Vietnam Earth I mentioned. That's going to go on top, right? Now, this is where the art of modeling and the eye comes in, right? And again, why I like the way you modulate. You want that contrast.
That's what I'm. But again, that's artistic license.
It is.
Right.
It is. So now you can see that it's the medium colored or the lighter colored mud is kind of in the transition zone between the dark and darkest mud, and you can still see the hull is left the way it is. And normally I would take a little more time, but I'm demonstrating and then I'll finish the model off camera. So now that that's dry, use another dry brush, and then this one you're now working it. You're now actually just dabbling it and working the powders in, okay, without wanting to cover the darkest, kind of leaving some of the dark areas. You're just working the powders into the mud, okay, and you can now begin to see some. It's okay to have a bit of the lighter colored powder go into the darker mud. That gives a nice variation. Okay, that's all I'm doing. And there's a lot of powder here. That's okay, because I'm just working it in. This middle part's completely dry. I'm going to leave it, because I like leaving the base color showing through a bit.
So you won't try and, like, do you try and fix the powder at any point, or?
Nope. Nope. Right now, I'm just letting this powder blend into the wetter dark mud. Okay, that's all I'm doing. And then, after I've worked this in, then you can literally kind of blow off the residual. Look how much is coming off. See, and look, you're left with a nice transition between some of the lighter mud and the darker mud. And get that cleaner. And then you can clean up the main hull area and bring it back, so that you then have a nice transition between dark mud, little lighter mud, and the hull color. Okay? So then, and this area you can see is a little bit more dark. Now, layering. Everybody's heard of layering, right? You could stop here. I mean, it doesn't look bad. Even within 5 minutes, it's hard for you to see, Dave, from way over there.
Yeah, but there is a difference for sure.
There's a variation. So, although one could say, you know, why did you apply the dark wash in the first case? Well, you're getting, the bottom was all that. I don't need to work anymore here with this powder because you hardly see it. But I still find that it gives my eye where I need to focus on applying more depth. And some people say, well, it's a useless step. But I still find, especially on the upper part where I'm not going to apply a lot of mud.
It frames it, though.
If that's the word I want, frames it.
Right.
Okay, now that's not bad, actually. It's got a nice... Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back with the dark mud enamel color. Okay, not the powder. And this is where you go back and forth. So you bring back this enamel color. I'll call it enamel color. It's not enamel powder. And I will then you can kind of work in some more dark, you know, mud flowing down, you see? It's
working some like streaks.
Streaks, and where there's some heavy rain coming down or something, and you can work back in, not all the areas, but where there's real recesses, you can reapply some of the enamel. And you can use wet effects. They have some nice products for wet effects. And just kind of like bits and pieces here. You see how it's a little darker, and you can see the streaks coming down from built-in mud at the top. But you're only doing little areas here and there, and I'm doing this fairly quick, but you can see the streaking with that. And you then can go back and forth, or you could even take, let's say, some of this lighter. Here's the Kook's Earth color, and you can see what that does. If I can open this thing here, get one of these things. They're great. These are, who makes these, Dave? Gunzi?
Gunzi, I think, yeah.
Great paint openers. So, oh, I want to share a funny story. So Dave and I were coming home from the AMP show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We stopped in at a Hobby Lobby. And I bought an Airfix 172nd Wildcat. And I'm in the parking lot gassing up. And for the length of me, I couldn't open the shrink wrap on the kit. I couldn't open it. I had no knife, and I'm trying to open it because I want to look at my kit. And it took, we were filling up for gas. It took me, 5 minutes? I still couldn't get it.
It was hilarious.
And
you ruined the pen?
I ruined a pen. I broke my pen trying to get the plastic off.
That did not want to come out.
And I just got so fed up, and I turned to Dave and I said, you know, I'm a black belt. I thought, I've been training in martial arts for 30 years. I break wood, I do that, and I can't get the shrink wrap off an Airfix 172nd.
Defeated by an Airfix Wildcat.
Defeated by a Wildcat. All right, so I'm taking some of the lighter stuff.
That was too funny.
Yeah. Now, I'm applying some of this lighter stuff in here to get even more depth. And again, you could go back with powders. You could go back with enamel colors. The world's your oyster. And although it may look a bit odd here and there, just put a little bit of dab here, put a little dab there. You're then going to come back with this stuff, the Humbrol thinner, and you're going to kind of work it with the enamel thinner now. This is clear Humbrol enamel thinner, so it doesn't look as stark, is the word I want. And you're just working it in. See? And by the end of the day, I'm doing this fairly quickly. Of course, Robert, our director, says, "Hey, the bottle's in the way." So you can see from the top camera down, right? You're getting that variation. I like the darkness of the mud streaks, and that's all I got to do. That took what, 10 minutes? Now again, take your time and work it back and forth. We're not working these areas yet with as much mud. I usually don't apply. I don't know about you, Dave. Do you apply a lot of mud products on the top of the vehicle?
Well, to me, it's as you go up, there's less and less. But no,
yeah,
typically I don't.
Yeah,
there might be a little bit of like what you're doing there. There might be a little bit of stuff that splashes up, maybe on the front mud guard. A lot would kick up on the rear.
Yes.
So you might do a little bit more on the rear, but on the horizontal surfaces, no, not a lot.
Well, let's take your advice. We're not going to work the whole model on the camera, but we will do a bit of the dark and light enamel colors on the bottom here, and a little bit more of the enamel. I'm using paper towel here so I don't wreck his. And stipple this. These are purely enamel colors. You can see the variation. And again, you could come back with a bit of powders and work them in a bit. The powders provide that little texture. And again, mix them with plaster of Paris, because then it'll give it a little more texture. I'm not right now. So there's that. And then I will go with a lighter mud fixer powder. Now, then we have this Vietnam Earth. Now, I could use it on the bottom, but I'm going to kind of leave it like that, because that's pure dark mud, and I kind of like that. And because this powder is actually much more lighter. And I'm just, like any model, you're experimenting as you're going. And we will dry that brush. Now I'm working with the lighter Vietnam powders. And again, going back and mixing it with thinner. You can also use sponge. I like sponges because then it just totally mixes things in. Now see, the enamel powder is much more lighter. Just the powder itself with a tiny bit of thinner, and it's a little bit more refined. Okay? Now, already I'm getting some effect here at the top with the enamel powder. I could apply the Vietnam Earth down on the bottom, and I'll do that a little later off camera. And I'm kind of blending it all in.
You're just kind of going back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Back and forth. See how quick I am. Now, I've dealt with the enamel colors, which is the liquids. I've dealt with the powders, working those in. I've blended them with the Humbrol enamel thinner. Again, you can use odorless. Blending with a sponge and with a brush. And then you can use these oil brushes. You can shake these up. And these I find are good for top side. I don't usually use them on the bottom hull. And I've got here, again, 3 colors: Dusty Earth. I've got streaking dust. And I have Earth Clay, which kind of complements the Vietnam thing. And let's start with... Now again, you're going to be experimenting on bits and pieces to make sure the colors kind of complement each other. That's what I was getting to earlier. And again, let's use the bottom part and see how this stuff looks. See how red it is? That's the clay look. Now it is very stark, and I usually tend to use the bottom just to figure out how it is and how it looks on the olive drab. And again, I'm just going as I go.
You're just kind of getting color, and you'll work it in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Less is best, right?
Less is best.
Less is always best. Grab another tissue so this.
No scratch is too small.
No scratch is too small, but you don't want to overdo it. I was humbly invited on the AMPS panel, Masters panel, to talk about how we approach modeling, and all the modelers there said less is best. So you can see it looks pretty ugly now. But as you begin to work it in, right? And you can see some of the oil stuff looks stark, but once you start working it in, and these here, this part is streaking, up and down streaking. Hopefully won't let it go through the... Now I'm using pure Humbrol thinners now, because I don't want any more colors, because I find if I have more colors, I lose the base olive drab. And I'm just kind of working it with the brush, and then I'm working it with... I'm getting the central areas of the green showing through with the sponge, right? And leaving these rivet areas dark, and just... So this was about what, 15 minutes?
Probably much more than that.
Okay, done.
When you're modeling, when you enjoy it, time goes by.
It does
very quickly.
So that's it, and then I'll finish up the rest of it for the next round, and then add the stowage. And that's about all I got to say about that.
That's
as
good, Harvey.
Forrest Gump says.
What a difference, eh?
What a look
What a
at this
difference
side.
on that side.
And then the difference on
Yeah.
this side.
Wow.
Right? You can still make sure that you don't cover up your previous layers, because you can still see some of that modulation coming through, but I should keep taking note of your stuff, because you want that contrast, and you're better at it than I am.
But you know, like you were talking about bringing back the modulation. I think you've done that on the side there with the weathering.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
I mean, that looks really good.
Yeah. And then, tissue to kind of blot it out. Again, less is best, eh?
Yeah.
Just, I don't
But
like
look
all
at
that.
you can see the streaking on the side.
Yep. And that's good enough.
That looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks really good.
Cool. And then come back for the other half where we'll have the finished
I have
model.
to admit, Harvey, your whole process is very random to me. Is very kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of mad scientist. But man, it works. Look at that.
Thank you.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
you know what? You said it all. Where I've said before, I don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4 step, and I don't think you do either. Every model, you use the word organic.
Yeah,
It's
but you take that organic to a different level. I think. Like but look at it. That's amazing.
And
Like, I'm gobsmacked at the streaking on the side.
Yeah, there you go.
Looks good. Well done, Harvey.
So that's basically it today, and then in the next episode we'll finish up with the topside weathering, have a look at some of the tracks, and go from there. So thanks for joining us.